My name is Bob Newton, and Gail and I were married in 1993.
But we moved here about 10 years ago. We lived in Seattle for a long, long time. I wanted to come to Edmonds, and so this is the place we bought, but it hadn't been tended to for many, many years. I told Bob, the house that we move into, I don't want to have to remodel it, and I don't want to have to redo the garden, and I don't want to spend money on the remodel. So we ended up doing all of those things. We hired somebody that we'd used before to do all of the landscaping. And we did the front yard first, and then we saved some money, and then did the backyard. And we did the backyard ourselves. We didn't have anybody help us with the design. And then about 2 years ago, we put in the water feature, which just sort of pulled the whole place together. We love it. I do the gardens, and Bob takes care of the lawn.
Well, I can talk about the lawn. talk about the lawn.
Talk about the lawn, Bob.
Growing grass in the Pacific Northwest is not fun. You fight all kinds of problems. I fight moss in the spring, in the winter, heavy moss, and it's not easy to get rid of. Right now I'm fighting poana grass here, and some crabgrass, and other weeds. So it's a process, and if you want to keep it green, it's a constant process of watering, fertilizing, watering, fertilizing. It goes on and on and on because we want it to look good, and I think it adds to the gardens to have the lawn look good.
In my family, my grandmother on my mom's side, and my mother and my sister, and were gardeners. And it was something that my parents, or my mom primarily, always did. And so I grew up with that. And my mother and her mother, they shared plants. As these people in my family have passed away, I would dig up the plants from their home before it went on the market. And my sister and I did that with my mom's place, and with my grandmother's place, and my great aunt's place, who lived in Tacoma. From that point on, I had two houses that I'd been in before here, and so I would just plant them in my house, and then when we moved, then I'd dig them up, plant them in the next, and then brought them here. In the sales agreement, I always said, whatever plants are tagged are not going to stay. And I did get a little bit of pushback on that from some people, but it's not negotiable. All of these years, I have tended to these plants. I have peonies that are in the front that my Aunt Glenn grew, and she was born in 1895. Wow. So I still, they're still growing in the ground, it makes me really happy. And for example, this rhodie right here came from my sister's house. Before we sold her house, I brought that here. And I have another plant of hers.
You might mention just, her sister was a master gardener.
Yes, she was a master gardener, right.
So she had beautiful yards, always had beautiful. Jan had beautiful, she had a touch.
So this rhodie that's next to my sister's was a gift from my mother, the little one there, and she passed away in 2017. She lived to be 98 and a half, so there's longevity there. So anyway, I get a lot of comfort. I have two trees from my dad, and so I get a lot of comfort from tending them. And if you were to look in our garage, I have probably 8 shovels and 4 clippers, but it makes me really happy just to hold. My sister touched all those tools, and so I get a lot of joy out of that.
We do have a wetland on the property. It's a fairly significant piece of the property, actually, in the backyard. And you cannot plant anything that's not indigenous in a wetland, nor can you remove things very easily without approvals. So we essentially leave the wetland to grow wild. And we actually have learned to love the things that grow there, that some people don't particularly like the
horsetails.
And we just leave them all summer long.
And I think people that are coming through on the tour are going to really enjoy seeing something like that. In the late afternoon, it's all in sun, and it's really quite beautiful. And I'm going to mention one thing. We have a colony of mountain beavers in the wetland. Even when I wasn't getting ready for the tour, I'd spend a lot of time out in the yard, you know, just because I enjoy it, and it's peaceful and it's quiet. You know, I don't have, in our yard, we don't have any houses or anybody that can look in, so it's really quite private. We're surrounded by trees.
Well, I spend a lot of time on the lawn. I'm usually out here 3 times a week or so, but I also spend my mornings 3 days a week in the gym, and if I don't keep moving, I'm going to be in trouble. So I do, exercise is an important part of my regimen, very important part of my regimen.
There's quite a bit of wildlife.
But the birds are nice. We've got a nest of rosy finches out front. We have robins. We have a lot of crows like everybody else.
Stellar
Finches.
jays come through, and
Yeah,
there's a very large tree that's in the wetland, and it's just a stump now, but you can see the notches in it, the board notches, you know, so when they cleared this whole area, it was a long, long time ago, over 100 years ago, because that's how they were doing it with their saws. You know, it was all done by hand. And so as we were digging to create this water feature here, we found an old chain. I think they call it a
logging chain.
Come along. I think that they would either wrap the logs and get them down the road, you know, to where the trucks were. We have that hanging up in our tree in the backyard here, close to where we're sitting. It was fun because I discovered it when my grandkids were here. Okay, so I've been gardening every single day for the last 2 weeks, getting ready for the tour, really. Of course, you know, I would like to spend more and more money on it, but you know, I have to try to hold it back. But I enjoy being out in my yard.
We spend a lot of time in the yard. It's a very pleasant existence.